Hello, my camera's not centered, and neither is this. Well, everything's off. I just start to record, and everything's off. Let me actually lower the camera a little bit. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ask the King. How's everyone doing? That's even worse. I screwed it up even worse. That's better. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ask the King. I'm Darkside Phil. Today is the 4th of March, 2021. This is actually the 85th episode of Ask the King I've ever done. If you can believe it, we're actually reaching episode 100. Will this show actually run 100 episodes? Keep in mind, I do this show roughly every 2 to 3 months. Sometimes it takes longer. I used to actually do this monthly. And basically, the demand for the show kind of wavered over the years, mostly because I became an interactive streamer. And when I became an interactive streamer, I talk with you guys every day on stream. So there's not a massive demand for me to do a dedicated Q&A show as much as there used to be. But I'm excited, as always, to answer your questions. First time we're doing this in about 2.5 months. Last time I did one was right before Christmas. So excited to answer your questions here. First, Ask the King of 2021. There was a lot of questions, actually, and some were pretty interesting and pertinent. So I'm excited for the show today. I hope you guys are excited, too. If we have time, I will try to do my best to answer your questions here live on the stream. However, we did start a little bit later today. Reason being, I'm actually making a pot of homemade Italian sauce down in my kitchen. And when I do that, it takes up some extra time, okay? And there's not much I could do about it. When it takes up the extra time to do that, I have to start late. And I started a little bit later today than I usually would as a result of doing that Italian sauce. So we basically got about 3 hours for the show to run, but I do take a couple breaks in between there so that I can, rest my voice, use the restroom and stuff like that. Okay, so we're gonna get started in a moment. A couple contributions have come in that I want to do some shout outs for. Here we go. Here's a troll. We're just gonna ban this guy right now. Right off the bat, we got a fucking troll to annoy everybody. So let me just get rid of that guy right now. Biggest Kobe fan did a 200-bit cheer and became the top cheerer of the day. So let me go ahead and get that up here for biggest Kobe fan. Biggest Kobe fan 24. 200-bit cheer. Thank you, sir, for becoming the top cheer of the day. Steven Seagull just cheers. Says, I could pay you to answer questions all day. He does like to cheer and get his questions answered on the show. However, I did say to people, since this is a dedicated Q&A show where people posted up their questions on my forums on thekingofhate.com, they also posted up some questions on my Twitter at TheyCallMeDSP, that because of that, those have priority. Even though I will do shout-outs for those who contribute today, I need to give priority to people who posted up their stuff, previously for the show. Now, Steven Seagull, did you just tip me? Because I got a tip from someone named Steven the Gull Seagull saying, since I verified my PayPal, all I can think about is rum ham. Give me up to on the leaderboards. It feels good. You are actually not verified on PayPal. I just checked the tip. It shows as registered, but unverified. So it could be that you didn't complete the process. It could be that you started the process and it's not processed yet. It does not show as a verified tip. So I know you were trying to say, oh yeah, but sadly, it's not verified, so I can't count that until it actually shows as a verified contribution, and I apologize for that. It means that we don't have any tips yet today, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, a couple quick things. First of all, the tips link. There it is. It's different. Since the last time I did the show, I now use Stream Elements to accept tips, not Streamlabs. So that's how you do it right there if you want to tip live during the show. We actually have tip rewards, as everyone knows, $50, $100 tip goals, and stuff like that during the show that will apply. Also, one way to guarantee to get your question answered here on the show at length on Ask the King is to pledge to my Patreon. If you're a $20 patron, you get your questions answered for sure. Now, some people have said, well, I don't understand. If I could just cheer and get a question answered on a stream, why would I pledge $20? Because your $20 question gets a big detailed answer on the show. Usually, during one of my streams, if you just cheer and you ask a quick question, I answer it incredibly quickly and move on to the gameplay. Here, you're going to get dedicated answers because this is a show to give you detailed, dedicated answers for those questions. You see what I'm saying? So, good opportunity. If you want to check it out, patreon.com/DarksidePhil. It's a good way to get your question answered on the show in depth. Okay? What the fuck? I cannot read that name. Zabadubu cheered and said, my name is my question. Great. I have no idea what the hell that means. Jack iThug cheered and said, I know you're a console gamer. Any handheld games or mobile games that you play or want to stream? Not that come to mind. Not right now. Anshang Forever, I believe, is here. I just want to make sure that this is really Anshang Forever and not an imposter. Because usually when Anshang Forever tips, he has a certain way of doing things, and this might be an imposter. But Nistar Runas cheers says, can you confirm if you cheer? I'll give you a short answer. Right, I usually do not go into detail when I give you an answer for a cheer versus an answer for anything else, you know. I usually will take my time with certain answers and not others. You see what I mean? Like, if you cheer, you're going to get a quick one. Quick, boop, done. As opposed to if you ask a question and Ask the King, you're going to get a big, detailed answer. Okay? Alright. So, Anshang Forever, is this really you? He tipped me $1.30 and said hi. I just want to confirm this is really Anshang and not someone trying to impersonate Anshang. Shirtless Mofo did 100-bit cheer. He said, looking sharp, currently working on my golden god body while listening to your chill stream. A golden god body, huh? Golden god. I don't know if I've heard of a golden god body. I heard Gold's Gym. There's another tip came through. A few little contributions here and there. And Jake Forever confirms that is him. Okay, I wanted to make sure that that was actually you. All right, Miko Fire, I believe, also has tipped me. We've got so many tips going on here. Yep, and that is correct. So, Miko Fire has tipped me $3. Let's get all these on the leaderboard, and then we'll get started answering questions. But everyone decided right now to contribute at once. So, $3 tip from Miko Fire and a $1 tip from Anshang Forever. That makes it $4 in total tips so far today. Okay. Thank you guys for your contributions. Sorry, Steven Seagal, I can't accept yours because it is showing as unverified. So, if you can verify your account, I'd be happy to accept that and give you further shout-outs. But all right. Excuse me. Ladies and gents, let's get to the questions, all right? First, we start off, as always, with people who posted up on my forums, thekingofhate.com. This is the best way you can post up your questions to make sure that they're going to get reviewed and answered for the show, okay? So the first question from Beautiful Butterfly. Some people may recognize the name. He says, Phil, I know you played many games over the years, but I'm curious what games or certain game experiences broke your heart or made you cry and why? There have been many over the years, but there's actually two moments that in my mind over the 12 plus years I've been a content creator stand out for me. The first is when I was playing The Walking Dead, the very first season from Telltale Games. Because if you actually look at the history of me making content for the internet, I'd only played like one other major narrative-based interactive game like that before, and that was Back to the Future, the series, also from Telltale Games, all right? But the reason that that game resonated with me was because that was a game that really did well at character development. If you play through The Walking Dead Season 1, you get to know the characters from that game. Every episode, they have more elaboration on who they are, their backstories, their character development, and you actually get attached to certain characters because they did such a good job at that. And the relationship between the main character, Lee, and Clementine, the girl who basically he kind of is like almost the adopted guardian of, is a really interesting and unique and very heartwarming relationship. He's teaching her how to survive over the course of the game and showing her things that, is going to allow her to persevere against overwhelming odds in an apocalypse. Okay. At the end of the game, I think we all know this. At the end of the game, Lee passes away. And without any spoilers or any spinning of how it happens, that got me. Because Lee was such a well-written character, well-voice-acted character, and my God, the way it happens, because you have a choice on how it happens, the way it happens is just so crazy depressing. And it got me so bad. I cried during that episode for sure. Now, maybe it had to do because the fact that is there fuzz on the edge of my hat here? Maybe it had to do with the fact, yeah, there is a big piece of fuzz stuck on the edge of my hat. The episode came out in the middle of the night, and I played it in the middle of the night when I was drinking. Because I used to do that back then. Back then, when I was doing stuff just for YouTube, frequently I would stay up all night, pull all-nighters to wait for game releases to come out in the middle of the night and then play them right away and get the videos up on the internet right away. It was about, those day one instant views, right? Not about that anymore, but it used to be. And no, by the way, it wasn't, Jane. Back then, I used to drink rum and Coke. That was a long time ago, like a decade ago, right? So, yeah, that really got me. And then the other game that I would say got me, I don't know if any of you ever even watched me play this game. Did you guys ever watch me play To the Moon? Okay? To the Moon is a little indie game. But it's an indie game about basically a couple who, over the years, they aged and, together there was technology involved here where you're basically reliving these lives in a virtual way. And you see how their life blossomed and their love blossomed for each other over time. And then you follow their whole lives all the way till the end of their lives when one of them actually gets a really debilitating disease and passes away. And it's like, my God, it's like so... It's real. The moments of emotional height are amazing. And by the way, this game looks like old school Final Fantasy. The graphics look like Final Fantasy 4 or 6. So it's not some robust game. It's the writing of the game is done so well. The music of the game is outstanding as well. And anyone who's had a relationship with someone who you really love them and you really care for them, and you play this game and you start to put yourself in the shoes of this couple, and you start to think, man, what if that's me? What if this happens? You start to actually feel like very emotional. It's very hard to not play through that game and not, if you've had that kind of romantic relationship before, not to put yourself in the shoes of those characters and then start to feel sad at the end of the game when one of the characters gets sick and all that. It's like, damn. And that game at the end, I bawled my eyes out at the end of that game. I remember, I was crying full on playing that game on stream with you guys. That was a long time ago. Again, that was before I had webcam on constantly. So you didn't see me crying, but you could hear me. I said, yeah, I'm crying, man. It really got me emotional at the end of the game. Those would be the two biggest that I could think of. Now, there have been other games as well, and I'm sure you guys could probably look back at my 12 years of content creation and pull other examples, but those are the two big ones that come to mind for me over the years that really got to me when it came to, made me cry during a playthrough, okay? Kenshi Fitmore cheers says, have you ever heard of Shatner Mouth? Curious to hear your thoughts. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Kenshi. All right, let's continue. See the difference between the cheer answers and Ask the King? I'll give you a full detailed answer if you post up your questions for this show. All right, let's continue. All right. The next question is actually a double question from our buddy Derek, regular stream viewer. He asks two things. First, he says, would you ever consider playing both Double Switch and or Night Trap again, maybe when there's downtime, since both have 25th anniversary editions available on the Nintendo Switch? Would I consider it? Yes. The games are very silly. The games are incredibly unique. It was that era of full motion video games on the Sega CD during the 1990s, and it really never came back. Like, there was Sega CD and 3DO that had all these full motion video games. They wanted to turn movies into video games, essentially. And that's why you have a game like Corey Haim as the main character in a game called Double Switch. It's like, what the frick? Like, it's so weird that this happened, this whole phenomenon. And back in the day, about 10 years ago, I played a ton of those games on Sega CD, and they were funny-ass playthroughs. But maybe playing them again in a modern setting with direct capture and everything would be pretty funny, I think. They're not great games, don't get me wrong. They're just weirdo games, but they're pretty entertaining to watch. Would I consider doing that again? Yes. Second question from Derek. He says, did you ever go to summer camp in the summer when you were younger? I sure did. I went all the time. Every summer we would do arts and crafts. I would play games to earn points. Is my wire malfunctioning? It is. The hell? My charge cable's malfunctioning. That's not good. I might have to get a new one soon. Okay, got working again. Anyway. He said we would do arts and crafts. We would play games to earn points for our squads. There'd be 4 different squads and teams. Science experiments with Alka-Seltzer acid tablets. Oh, guys, it'd be one of those volcanoes. My favorite field trips, like going to Woody Woodchuck's local kids arcade, was a very fun day, earning tickets and using tokens, and even going swimming at the swimming pool with friends I made from summer camp. All sounds fun. I have never been to summer camp. Reason being, my mom, when I was born, became a stay-at-home mom. She did work before then, but when I was born, she decided she was just going to basically stay home and make sure that there was always a parental guardian around when I was home. So during the summertime, even though my dad had to keep working, when I was off from school, my mom would basically supervise the stuff that I would do. And I would be outside playing with friends and stuff like that. You know, it was never a necessary thing for me to go to summer camp. Kids who usually go to summer camp go for 2 reasons. Number 1, because their parents are working during the summer and there's no one to watch the kids. And number 2, because maybe the kids, there's not a lot of people in the neighborhood who are other kids, so you can't have a lot of social interaction. So you send your kid to camp so they have a lot of social interaction with other kids and they can have friends and stuff, right? There were plenty of kids in my neighborhood when I grew up. I had plenty of friends. It was never an issue. It was basically I could go outside and play with the neighborhood kids every day during the summertime. So No, I never went to summer camp. I wish I had a better answer for you, but the answer is no, I never had an opportunity to go to summer camp or do anything like that. Someone just said, or they're fat. Now, I don't know about that. I don't know about fat camp. When I was a kid, I wasn't fat at all. I was skinny as shit when I was a kid. So definitely my parents wouldn't have been sending me to a camp like that. So it's funny because you have all these movies, Americana movies of, oh, what kids are like going to summer camp. I never really understood it. I get the tropes and stuff from those movies, but you know, I watch a show like Salute Your Shorts on Nickelodeon too, another show that was all about just being at camp. And I never really understood. I got my knowledge about how American kids camps work by watching movies and Salute Your Shorts, because I never went myself. So, all right, shut up to Actual Brother. Did I say shut up or shout out? Shout out to Actual Brother, who resubscribed for 9 months. Thank you very much. He says, what's up, Phil? Not much, but I'm excited to answer your questions today. Good to see you, Actual Brother. Thank you for the support. Super Scuba 06 cheered. He says, I'm thinking of starting a Switch collection and buying a Switch with physical games. It's been a few years since it came out. I don't know if it's worth it. What do you think? I don't know. I don't like physical games. For me, I think physical games are more about just having a collection rather than actually needing them. For the Switch, though, you may want physical games more for the Switch than another console. Reason being, the Switch does not have a lot of internal storage on it. And, you know, other consoles, maybe you could store 5, 6, 7, 8 giant games. Switch, you could maybe store 3, 4 tops, and then you're going to run out of storage space. So you might want to actually have more physical copies of games on the Switch, especially if it's a game you think you're going to go back to later in the future. But, I don't know. For me, I'm just not a physical guy. You know that. I'm not a physical collector anymore. At one point, I had a giant game collection and everything, and things just changed over the years. I've gone all digital for several years, so I don't see, like, for me, I don't see the value in that, but maybe you would see a value in that. All right, continuing on. Matthew asked the following. He says, Phil, I've been a huge fan of your channel since I was only 8 years old. Now I'm 19. Damn. What's crazy is that that's actually possible because I've been making content for over 12 years. What are your most anticipated games for 2021? Well, my most anticipated games for 2021 are games that sadly don't have release dates for 2021. The New Horizon, which is what it's called, Forbidden Wilds, the new God of War, Ragnarok, are two of the biggest games that I really am excited for playing on PS5. Like, I feel those games are going to be the first major experience of next-gen titles on PS5 that are going to blow our socks off. I really believe that. We have no information about when they're coming out or anything like that, right? Now, I would argue probably the first AAA game of 2021 that I am getting excited for is Resident Evil 8. But at the same time, the game just looks confusing to me. Like, is it really Resident Evil? I don't understand it anymore. A bunch of fucking vampires and shit. It's like... Then again, I was very skeptical about Resident Evil 7, if you remember. the playable teaser demo that they released for Resident Evil 7, I didn't think felt like Resident Evil either. But then the game ended up being exceptionally good. So maybe I'm just, you know, being a little bit too apprehensive because we've had so many game franchises over the last several years that looked like they were going to be great, and oh my god, and then it ends up being incredibly disappointing. Maybe I'm a little bit punch drunk from getting underwhelming game releases, you know. But I'm definitely excited for that, you know, especially because it's a survival horror. We don't get a lot of survival horror games these days anymore. Honestly, that would be my top 3 for this year, but we don't even know if 2 of those are coming out this year. So, thank you, Matthew, for the question. Okay. Question next is from, question next. The next question is from I Cured It With My Brain. And he asks, what retail products, like food or drinks included, did you love and buy regularly until they were suddenly discontinued? What do you wish would be brought back from discontinued products? Hell. Well, it's funny because it seems like a lot of the stuff that I end up liking ends up being discontinued for one reason or another. I don't know why, but it just seems to be the reason. So, many years ago, at this point, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I was drinking an energy drink here on the streams. And I was pushing it to you guys because I thought it was a lot more healthy than other energy drinks. It was called V8, but I can't remember exactly what the name of it was. I talked about it in videos and stuff. You'll see, you know, me mentioning, oh, I'm drinking a V8 energy drink today. So why is the V8 energy drink better than other energy drinks because it has fruit juice and vegetables in it. It actually was meant to be a healthy energy drink with having real fruit and vegetables mixed into it. It had vitamins and minerals and things in it that you needed. Plus, it had some caffeine infused in it through green tea, rather than having like, oh, you have an energy drink that just throw in the fucking caffeine or whatever. This was from natural green tea extract. So it was pushed as like a healthier energy drink. I'm sure it's not healthy for you, but it was better than, say, drinking a soda or a Red Bull or a Monster energy drink and shit like that. So I would drink those on the streams and it would give me a good energy boost and I felt good about it. So much so I liked it that when Kat moved in with me in 2018, she started drinking them and we both loved them and we were buying them and drinking them actively. And then they discontinued it completely and got rid of the entire product line. They still had VA energy drinks, but they were just uncarbonated, like really high dense juice. Like, it felt like you were drinking heavy fruit juice when you drank those, while the drinks that we were liked were the ones that were like carbonated soda with fruit and veggies in it. They discontinued it entirely, and we didn't drink it now for like 2+ years, okay? Out of nowhere one day, Kat comes home from work and says, look what I found. They brought it back. They completely rebranded it. They call it something different, but it's exactly the same drinks. Now, they have way less flavors now. When we used to drink it 2-3 years ago, it was like 5-6 different flavors you could choose from. Now they only have 2. But they brought it back out of nowhere. And I don't know what the reasoning is of the people who have these products, that they bring them in and they phase them out, that they bring them back again. Maybe it wasn't a popular seller, but they thought maybe now it's time to bring it back. I have no idea. But it's back again. So now Kat has started drinking those again. Personally, I don't drink energy drinks on the streams anymore. If I'm going to have any kind of caffeine, I just have like a cup of coffee in the morning and that's it. Because I don't like having constant like sugar on my teeth and stuff. Actually, there was one point I was drinking energy drinks and I started having tooth pain from doing it. I said, no more of that. So now I just drink stuff that's no sugar or anything in it here on the streams. But Kat started drinking them again and she loves them. So that's one example. Another example would be when I first moved here in 2014. You may have noticed on the streams I had a certain kind of bottled water that had mint essence infused into it. And they had different ones, like a peppermint, they had spearmint. They actually had one that was called chocolate mint and one that was a citrus mint. It was these different flavored essences in bottled water. I loved those. I drank those for like a year to a year and a half. Gone. Apparently doesn't exist anymore because I haven't seen it in a single store since like 2015. Don't know what happened. Did they go out of business? I loved it. I bought a ton of every week. I was buying like 10 bottles of this stuff to drink on my streams. And then they got rid of it. I don't know why. There's many other examples. I'm sure if I actually talked to my wife about this, we would sit down and brainstorm like 10 things that we like that over the years they got rid of. No lie, one just came to mind. So there was a meal, a frozen meal that Kat and I used to get. It was from Tyson Foods. If you're not aware, Tyson Foods usually does chicken. So what it was a stir-fry meal where it was like grilled chicken pieces, marinated in a sauce with various different sides that are mixed together in a stir-fry dish. So there was one that was like pasta with broccoli and marinated chicken with a cheese sauce. There was one, and this was Kat's favorite. This is the one we got all the time. It was called sweet potato hash. So it was sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, peppers, onions, some kind of a pasta, and the pieces of chicken marinated in a chipotle sauce. It was really good. And we ate that for like a year and a half on and off as a meal that was an easy meal. Just toss it in a stir fry, stir it up, you're done. Dinner's ready. It takes 15 minutes to make, easy to clean, one pot, you're done. Discontinued. They don't have it at any store we've gone to in the last year. We can't find it anymore. And that was a staple thing that we did. Was it not popular? Didn't sell enough? Did they find a reason why they didn't want to sell? I don't get it. Why they do that to certain products. Hobo X says, how about when you were a kid? See, here's the thing. Now, he says he liked Waffle Crisp cereal. I had Waffle Crisp cereal. I remember it. It was like a crunchy cereal that almost gave you like a chalkiness in your mouth because it had so much like seasoning on it, like sugar and shit. I remember the flavor. I can tell you right now, I remember the flavor. It didn't taste like waffles. It tasted like something else, but it was good. I liked Waffle Crisp. I can't really tell you what about that. I haven't had a children's branded cereal in so long. I couldn't tell you. Like, I'm sure all the cereals today are different. You know, they still have things like Lucky Charms and Cookie Crisp and Cocoa Puffs, and they're all different. Like I remember I had Golden Grams like several months ago. I had a bowl of Golden Grams, and I was like, this is Golden Grams? Like, it didn't taste like Golden Grams at all. They're tiny little things now. They used to be big and crunchy. Now they're like these itty bitty little things. They changed it over the years. But I couldn't tell you like stuff like that because I'm not going to actively go back and eat children's cereal, so I don't even know what they would and wouldn't have from when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I wonder if there's some people said Fruity Pebbles. I wonder if some of these are still the same as they used to be, right? Like, I wonder if there's actually like a kid's thing, like cereal, that's still exactly the same as it used to be back in the day. They never changed it. I doubt it, but I wonder. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. What time is it? Oh, we still got half an hour before I need to take a break. That's good. Next question is from Cisco Certified. And Cisco Certified asks the following question. Ready? Since the departure of Yoshinori Ono, from Capcom, is this good news or bad news for the Street Fighter franchise? Should the blame for the decline of the franchise in recent years fall squarely on him, or is he simply the fall guy for mistakes made by others at Capcom? Are you more relieved that he's gone, which could result in a new direction for the franchise, or are you more concerned that his departure could result in no more Street Fighter games at all? I guess we should give a little bit of background to this question so that people understand where this is coming from. You need the background story, because if I just answer the question straight up, people will be like, what the hell, who's Yoshinori Ono? What are you talking about? All right. So, Capcom used to be the big wig in fighting games. Through the 1990s and the early 2000s, they made so many Street Fighter games and variations of Street Fighter games and made a ton of money. Street Fighter 2, 5 versions. Street Fighter 3, 3 versions. Street Fighter Alpha, 3 versions. Capcom versus SNK, 2 versions. Marvel versus Capcom in the Versus series. I mean, you had X-Men, Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom 1, Marvel versus Capcom 2. Every one of the games I just mentioned was a humongous, popular, successful fighting game, both in arcades and then when the home ports were coming out, the home ports would sell like crazy. So fighting games were a cash cow for Capcom. Huge source of income for them, okay? For whatever reason, in the early 2000s, the people at Capcom in charge decided they didn't care about fighting games anymore. They felt that fighting games were not going to be a focus of their division anymore. They were going to focus on games like Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, and other various things. This was also a time when Mega Man completely changed to be a different kind of game franchise, and a lot of people had issue with that. So there was like a big shakeup with the management at Capcom, and they changed things around and just had different determinations. For the time of like 2001 all the way to like 2009, only one major fighting game was released by Capcom, and it was Capcom Fighting Jam. It was a terrible game where almost no new sprites were used. They were all reused sprites from other Capcom fighting franchises. It was collectively agreed it was one of the worst fighting games Capcom ever made, and it was really almost never spoken of in competitive circles. People just ignored it. And so, for an incredibly extended period of time, Capcom fell out of popularity as a fighting game manufacturer. No one really knows what the methodology was. But then, out of nowhere, someone, a big wig at Capcom, decided they wanted fighting games to come back in a big way. And they took a man named Yoshinori Ono, I apologize, I can't see the guy's name, who was a lifelong fan of Street Fighter. A man who infamously had a Blanca action figure. Look, this is from when I was a kid, and, you know, I love Street Fighter, and, you know, I'm going to rejuvenate the franchise, okay? So, they basically had this guy spearhead the rejuvenation of Street Fighter and fighting games at Capcom. All starting with Street Fighter 4 in 2008. Yes, that's right, because the game actually came out in 2008 in Japan, came out in 2009 in the United States and Western audiences, but it was out since 2008 in Japan. I played it at release because I went to an arcade in Rhode Island, Tokyo Game Action, that imported the Japanese game boards, and I played it at release. Man, it was so cool to play Street Fighter again in a new modern era because the graphics were modernized at the time. Rather than being 2D sprites, full 3D graphics, and having new implementations like the focus attack dash cancels and things like that. It made Street Fighter feel like a modern franchise while all other fighting games had advanced. You know, we're talking about Mortal Kombat, Tekken, all the fighting game franchises had all continued through the 2000s. Street Fighter had just paused and stopped. And then they came back in a big way. And Street Fighter 4 was a giant success, okay? Rejuvenated the fighting game franchise completely. It made fighting games mainstream again, where for a good 9 years there, they were considered more fringe in the background of competitive gaming and everything. All of a sudden, Street Fighter 4 pushed fighting games to the forefront, all right? The many versions that came out, oh my god, the amount of peripherals at that time that came out, 100 different companies were making joysticks and game pads. Mad Catz, which was a company that was falling apart at the seams due to the crash of the music game genre, rejuvenated themselves, all right, by basically putting out 100 game pads and joysticks and things for Street Fighter. Ono was seen as a giant success for Capcom. Wow, thank God we put this guy in charge. This is amazing that we did this. You know what I mean? Like, this is outstanding that we have someone who knew what he was doing, and he rejuvenated Street Fighter from the ground up, and it's tremendous. So Capcom decided they were going to throw more and more money at fighting games because Ono seemed to know what he was doing. So then they came out with Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Now, personally, I have mixed feelings about Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I'm someone who grew up with the Versus series. I named every game in the series, and just a few minutes ago, I loved them all. I played them competitively. I was like way into it. For me, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was a game that was huge on style and very light on substance. MVC 3 was a game that was 100% one kind of gameplay, rushdown. You could not play MVC 3 in a variety of styles. It was just 100% rushdown content, that's it. Previous games in the Versus series were different. You had a variety of gameplay. You had characters that could be played very differently at high level. Well, MVC 3 just became 100% kind of rushdown, flashy gameplay. But the thing was, MVC 3 hugely caught on because of the flashiness. It became the game to watch on streams because of the way that it looked. And that was the era of huge fighting games emerging as you need to watch Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 at a big tournament. And it blew up 10 years ago. Like, this was the big thing going on at the time. Okay? So, again, it almost seemed like Ono could do no wrong. But then some of the mistakes started to happen. First of all, Capcom was going to lose the Marvel license at the time. The Marvel license was going to go to a different company. So they had to rush out, within 1 year of Marvel 3 being out, they rushed out Ultimate Marvel 3, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which essentially was a much better version of Marvel vs. Capcom 3 with more characters and much better gameplay elements. But a lot of people were upset because they just kind of competitively gotten into Marvel 3, and now that within a year the whole game changed. Like, why did this happen when we were loving the original Marvel 3 and getting to a point, it was funny because when Marvel 3 came out, people were saying it's going to be like another 10 years. That was like the running meme. It was like another 9 years, another 11 years, another 10 years, whatever it was. The meme was Marvel 2, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, was such a high-level competitive game. 10 years that game was at the forefront of competitive fighting games, right? And when Marvel 3 came out, people were like, wow, here's a game that's going to be another so-and-so amount of years at the forefront because these Marvel games are so high-level. And within 1 year of Marvel 3 coming out, the whole game changes. They already upended that whole concept, okay? So people were pissed. In addition, again, like I told you, the game was very, very one-sided in how it was played. So after you've seen the same kind of rushdown combo, rushdown combo, rushdown combo a million times, you've seen the whole game. So unlike Marvel 2, which was robust and had a ton of different ways to play it with different characters, Marvel 3 ended up being the same shit over and over. And even though it was flashy to watch in a tournament, it kind of fizzled out and didn't have a lot to it, okay? The game was very popular for a few years in streaming circles, and then it kind of died out, while a game like Street Fighter 4 remained very popular, all right? Now, the big mistake that happened with Ono, the big money loser for Capcom, that Capcom got really pissed off at him about, was Street Fighter Cross Tekken. This was a game that was supposed to break boundaries. Oh my god, we're taking the Tekken franchise into the Street Fighter series for the first time ever. It was supposed to be a giant collaboration between the two companies where actually Konami was going, not Konami, Bandai Namco, who makes Tekken, they were going to make a crossover game, Tekken Cross Street Fighter, and Capcom was going to make Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and they were going to be completely different styles of games, where Tekken was going to play like Tekken, and Street Fighter was going to play like Street Fighter, but they were going to have guest characters from the respective series, all right? The problem was, Capcom ruined it by making their game, number one, have tons of stupid gimmicks, gems that you could equip to the characters that give them buffs and stuff. And it didn't make sense. It was like a fighting game that was designed like an RPG. Fighting game players didn't like that. They want a straight up fighting game. They don't want to have, oh, I need to earn gems by playing modes and put out my character and it changes the character. It didn't make sense. It was really fucking stupid. Okay? But in addition to that, the real thing that happened that really destroyed the game, they hid characters who were completely finished. They were fully designed, ready to go and be played in the game. They hid the characters on the game disc as inaccessible, then charged the players who already bought the game, paid full retail price for the game. They charged them for a season pass to unlock the characters that were already available on their game disc, hidden behind a code. That was scummy shit. That's called, we don't care about you. We just want to milk as much money as we can out of the customer. And it was completely exposed. People found this out. They data mined the disc, found it, and were like, are you kidding me? Blanca and this character are on there. Fully. They don't even need to add any additional code to play. They're playable characters. They locked them behind a paywall to try to basically squeeze money out of the people. Completely dishonest, because they didn't tell anyone about that. Completely disingenuous. Like, you're not, when you're telling me you're selling me a season pass, you're not. You're selling me the content I already bought on my fucking disc. You're charging me for it twice, basically. So this turned into a giant controversy. And over the course of that game went from like, okay, this is going to be a great game, to no one wants to ever play it ever again. Like, this controversy single-handedly destroyed the game. So all competitive circles dropped it. Everyone just stopped playing it completely. And it completely died within like 6 months of release. No one cared about it anymore. So it's a shame, because I played it and I actually thought the game played a lot like Capcom vs. SNK, which I liked that series. But the entire franchise just died because of this really underhanded business practice that Capcom did. So, the design of the game sucked because of the gem system, and then the greed of Capcom made the whole game fizzle out. That was a giant money loss for Capcom. And it was such a bad situation with the PR that the Tekken side of things, Bandai Namco, dropped their entire idea of doing the collaboration with Capcom, and they never released Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Instead, if you guys saw last time around, was it Tekken 7 or Tekken 8? I forget which one it was. I think it was Tekken 7. They had Akuma as a guest character. That was it. They had one character for Street Fighter as a guest character, and that was it. They just scrapped the whole idea of doing the full-on game because they didn't want to have anything to do with the stinkiness that was Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Now, we follow the history here. Street Fighter 4 had many popular iterations, made a ton of money for Capcom. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate Marvel 3 made money for Capcom, but fizzled out after only a few years, while previous Versus games in the series had been 10 plus years and were still played in competitive circles. So obviously, you got a mixed bag here. Street Fighter Cross Tekken comes out, a huge failure for Capcom, they lose money. So what happened was Capcom started to lose faith in Yoshinori Ono. Even though he was still the public face of fighting games for Capcom, behind the scenes, Capcom basically were kind of telling him, you got to do better. You just really screwed this up right now. And we were at the forefront being the top fighting game company, and now because of these screw-ups, people are now thinking that other companies are competitive. Remember, this was the opportunity now for a company like NetherRealm to come back from the dead and totally redesign Mortal Kombat from the ground up, which is what they did. They redesigned Mortal Kombat from the ground up, and now that was becoming another popular franchise. Then they had Injustice. So direct competitors to Capcom were coming out of the woodwork and doing better than Capcom. So Capcom was pissed at Ono and told him, you got to do better. And he didn't do better. The only other games that came out under his watch were Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which was, 2017, a game that the graphics were terrible, the game engine, very similar to Marvel 3, where it was just one type of gameplay with the rushdown. It wasn't really anything that was going to have any kind of longevity. People played the game essentially for 6 to 8 months and dropped it entirely. What do you expect was going to happen? You took out the characters people love. The X-Men and stuff were removed because they didn't have the license to use them in the game anymore. They put in crappier characters, and they didn't really innovate at all. It was basically Marvel 3 watered down. Do you think people are going to love that? Of course not. Okay. Now, the final straw that broke the camel's back here was that Ono behind the scenes, Yoshinori Ono, was working on Street Fighter 6. Now, Street Fighter 5 came out and was an incredibly mixed audience, all right? Some people to this day love Street Fighter 5 and absolutely will say Street Fighter 5 is an amazingly good fighting game, and, you know, other people hate it. And the problem was when Street Fighter 5 came out, Capcom was saying to Ono, basically, this is your chance to redeem yourself from how bad Street Fighter Cross Tekken did. Street Fighter 5 was one of the worst fighting game launches ever. The game released with little to no content whatsoever. Most of it was online only, and the online component didn't even work for over a month after its initial release. So they essentially sold you a game you couldn't play for a month after it came out because it sucked. Then they did the research. They found out all the online netcode was outsourced to a third-party company that basically was like amateurs and didn't know what they were doing. So that's why it sucked at launch. Capcom took a good 6+ months of damage control trying to fix the game and make it functional so people would have faith in them again. And then by the time that it finally was realized that the game worked, people realized, oh my god, this game has the most lag of any game ever because it was designed that way. Innately, Street Fighter V was designed to be a game with tons of online lag, and that was supposed to be the way it was played. So you're trying to play this game at tournaments, like, I don't understand why my character is so sluggish, because they designed the game that way. That everything in the game is sluggish. So you can't even play the game as an action-packed game where you react to stuff going on. Instead, the game had to be played as a pattern game where you just throw out a pattern and you guess at what your opponent's going to do and hope that what you do counters it, because you can't actually react to anything happening because the game plays so slowly and so sluggishly. So, Street Fighter V, completely slammed, completely criticized at launch. Ono screwed up again. So that's 2 straight screw-ups. You know what I mean? Like 2 huge screw-ups for Capcom. Now, over time, Street Fighter V ended up becoming a success for Capcom for 2 primary reasons. The first is because Capcom didn't have any other fighting games planned. They weren't working on Street Fighter 6 yet. They weren't working on a new franchise. They had lost money so much on Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and Street Fighter V was their big gamble, and that didn't do so well at launch. So they were like, we gotta put all of our eggs in the same basket because we don't have money really to do anything else. At the time, if you remember, Resident Evil also was failing because Resident Evil just had Resident Evil 6, and that was a huge disappointment for Capcom sales-wise, so they had to find a way to make money. That's why they rebooted Resident Evil with Resident Evil 7, completely different style of game and stuff like that. So when Street Fighter V released to so much criticism and not being a good game in the first year, and it didn't sell nearly as well as Capcom had hoped it would, they were hoping for Street Fighter 4 sales numbers. They didn't sell nearly as close to Street Fighter 4 numbers, like less than half. It was that bad. Capcom was like, oh god, what are we going to do? They did stick with the game, even though the game, sadly, in competitive circles, most people will publicly admit at this point that Street Fighter V is far inferior to other competitive Street Fighter games. That it's full of just not the kind of gameplay you would expect from that higher standard of competitive play. The game looks nice, and that's about it. So, the thing is, Capcom has milked the shit out of that game over the years. Milked and milked, keep releasing DLC characters. They don't have anything else. All right? Now, the rumor is, we don't know if this is actually true, but behind the scenes, the rumor is that Ono was now spearheading Street Fighter 6. Now, keep in mind, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, a failure. Street Fighter V, considered a failure at launch, even though they did get a longevity out of it. At launch, not even close to the sales of Street Fighter 4. Huge failure for Ono. And then Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, a huge failure. 3 huge failures for this guy. Boom, 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 with no successes in between to pad them. Okay? So apparently, Street Fighter 6 is being designed as a team-based combat game. Now, I don't know if that means like it's kind of like the Capcom vs. SNK series where you formulate a team of fighters that each have a point-based system, or if it's more of a tagging in and out system like the Versus series. I don't know. But apparently the game's in development. And the bigwigs at Capcom finally sat down to look at it and said, this is all you've done? Like, this is it? We're done. We have no faith in you anymore, Ono. Like 3 straight failures, and now this is what you have for Street Fighter 6, and you think this is going to save fighting games for us? And they shit-canned him. Basically what happened, the rumor is, they told him, they're going to demote you. We don't want to fire you because you have done good work for us. We want to keep you in the family, but we're going to demote you down to this, and we're going to have other people jump in and take over your position because you don't know what you're doing. And Ono declined and left the company. Apparently, that's what happened. So, at this point, we don't know what is going on with Street Fighter. Is Street Fighter 6 still a team-based game? Did they even use any of the ideas of Ono and the team that was working on the game previously before he left? Or did they just completely crap everything out and start at square one? We have no idea, okay? So, I mean, Cisco Certified, thank you for the question. I hope that was a very in-depth explanation, okay? When it comes to Ono leaving the company, is this a good or bad thing? That's going to depend on who you ask. Some people really liked Street Fighter 4. They liked what Ono did with Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And they're sad to see the guy go because, if anything, I think what everyone can agree is the guy was a nice guy. He was a personable guy when he talked to the public. He was always upbeat. He was always full of energy and full of enthusiasm for the games that he was promoting. And it was a shame to see a guy like that fail. You know what I mean? When you have someone who you can tell they kind of, in their heart, they love the product. They're not doing it just to make money. They're doing it because they love the franchise. Like I said, I'm a lifelong fan of Street Fighter. Here's my Blanca action figure. You know, that's cool to see them be in charge of it. But sadly, to see them fail is just equally as heartbreaking. You know what I mean? Admittedly, my take on it is Street Fighter 4 was a rousing success. And if they kept with that vein of success, that would have been amazing. But Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Street Fighter 5. And then Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. 3 straight failures? Like, how much more leeway can you give the guy? And this is money, big money. Capcom's investing in these games just for them to be underwhelming in the sales department. I mean, what do you think was going to happen? You know, it's just business. At this point, I don't think it was personal. I think it was purely a business decision to get rid of it. Now, I would love to speculate. Let me speculate and tell you what I want to happen. I would like Street Fighter 6 to come out and be a return to form. Play like old school Street Fighter. Bring back fundamentals, footsies, bring back the reactive gameplay. Oh, someone's doing something, I can react to it. Because the game doesn't have insane input, delay, and sluggishness, I can actually do things that show off my hand-eye coordination and my quick thinking skills. Which is the opposite of what Street Fighter 5 is. It's literally the opposite of that game. Okay? If they went back to fundamentals of what makes fighting games good, and then you add in a gimmick or two, think about it. At its core, that's what Street Fighter 4 started out as. It was fundamental gameplay with FADCs, focus attack dash cancels, which get a good variety of gameplay in there. Now, later on, with the later iterations, the game became unbalanced and broken. But originally, the game was kind of interesting with its first few iterations. And if you could go back to that kind of fundamentals, I really feel Street Fighter 6 could be a successful game. A team-based element where you're building a team of 2 or 3 fighters that have different stat levels and different abilities and different HP meters and stuff, that could also be an interesting twist that we haven't seen since the likes of Capcom vs. SNK 2, which is what? It is 20 years old now, right? All these things could be great. The problem is, Capcom seems to go for flashy these days. Everything they want is to be pretty and flashy because they think what's going to sell games is making them accessible to viewers on Twitch. I hate to say it. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was a game light on substance but heavy on flash, and for 2-3 years became the giant streamed game to watch on Twitch. But then what happened when that hype fizzled out and the game had no substance and no longevity? No one even talks about Marvel vs. Capcom 3 that much anymore. Every once in a while, you got someone like Maximilian who runs a tournament series because the game's all but dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty bad situation. Like, they need to get games that have fundamentals that are going to get people hooked and interested in the games, but also competitive circles are going to like them. You know what I mean? Like, you have to find that balance. That's what I wish Street Fighter 6 would be. Stop worrying about bullshit and just make a game that plays great, and then you can worry about all the other bullshit afterward. If people are hooked on your game, then you can nickel and dime them for the fucking DLC later. Don't think, oh, make a shit game and then immediately start selling nickel and dime character DLCs to make more money. You know what I mean? That's my take. Do I have faith Capcom will do something like that? No. I'll be honest. I have no faith in Capcom doing the right thing. I'm just being honest here. I like Capcom as a company. I think that what they did with Resident Evil 7 was a great idea to rejuvenate the franchise. I just don't have faith in them doing the right thing anymore. I think that, sadly, they kind of... I've lost faith in them with fighting games. They were my go... In the 90s, they were the ones who got me into fighting games with Street Fighter 2. They're the ones who... They were a major part of my life. The whole decade, the 90s into the whole 2000s, when I was traveling to play competitive Street Fighter and everything. You know what I mean? Like, Capcom fighting games were a part of my youth. And it's sad now to see that, like, I don't care about them anymore. And a lot of people don't care about them anymore. Most of the people who played fighting games back in the day don't really play them that much anymore. Don't care because they think that they've changed and been ruined and or have failed. That's not good. What, you know, the classic people from the OGs from back in the day don't even care about fucking fighting games anymore because the games suck. That's not good. You know what I mean? We need a game that's going to reinvigorate these people again. I don't know. I mean, for me, people ask me all the time, would I ever get back into the FGC? Would I ever play fighting games at a competitive level again? I'm like, Capcom needs to make a game that's going to get me back to feeling like that. Like, I want to sacrifice time, effort, money to travel and stuff in order to play these games because nothing they've put out in the past decade has given me that feeling. The very launch of Street Fighter 4, I got that feeling and I went to tournaments. And then around 2011, I just didn't care to travel or do tournaments anymore. I just didn't care. It wasn't interesting anymore because the games weren't good enough for me. Like, I wasn't excited anymore to play them. So that's my take. What they need to do with Ono leaving, this is their chance to go back to basics and put out a game franchise with gameplay that's going to hook people all around the world. It could go right back to where Street Fighter 4 was again. But Street Fighter 5 was so bad. I don't know if they even have people on their dev teams who know what makes a fighting game good anymore. I can't believe they sold Street Fighter 5. I really can't. That game is one of the worst fighting games I've ever fucking played in my life. Every time I go back to it, I groan how bad the fucking game is. I can't believe people like that fucking game. So they gotta go back to being a good game. And I don't know if they're ever going to. You know what I mean? So do I have faith that with Ono gone, Capcom will do the right thing? No. Okay. Shoutouts. We got a lot of contributions that came in here. Let's see here. So Steven Seagull is now testing. He tipped me another $1. He wanted to see if his tip was showing up as verified. Let's give it a look. I'll let you know here. Okay. And by the way, Wilson of Aragorn, I see that you are here. FYI, that tip from many days ago still has not cleared. Just so you know. I know that you're keeping an eye on it because you're waiting to see if it's going to clear or not from your bank. It did not clear yet. Just to give you the heads up if you were wondering. Let's see here. So this is the tip right here. All right. Steven Seagull, yes. Your tip shows is verified. So thank you. So Steven Seagull now technically is the top tipper of the day because earlier he had tipped $7 or some dollars here. So let's get him up on the leaderboard. You're showing is verified now. Thank you for that. And then another $1 on top of that to test. That's $8, so we're up to $12 of tips. Thank you, Steven Seagull. You're good to go now. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Then in the meantime, I got another tip. Oh, wow. Hold on a second here, because this may be the top tip of the day if this one is okay. Let's take a look here. It is. All right, I received a $10 tip from Thugs on the Flow. Very nice. Let's get that on the leaderboard. $10 tip from Thugs on the Flow. That gets us up to $22 in tips. Oops. And they said the following. I've been a fan since 2010. Know that for every hater out there, you have tons of people rooting for you. I've always loved your vlog style videos, and I've watched them all, so I'm glad Ask the King is still around. Thank you for all the fun over the years. You are welcome, and thank you very much for the support. Thank you for letting me know. You know what we call them? We call them the silent majority. There are thousands of people who still watch my content on a daily basis, whether it's on demand on DSP Gaming or the hundreds that come by and watch me live on Twitch every day. I know that. Do they all speak up and say, hey, Phil, we love your content? Of course not. They're there to enjoy the content, and, you know, I understand that. It's the vocal assholes who try to get the attention for themselves on the internet. But I totally understand that there's tons of people out there who like my stuff, so thank you for the support. Mezzanac has subscribed to the channel. Thank you, Mezzanac, for the sub. I appreciate that. An anonymous cheerer did a 50-bit cheer. Thank you to the anonymous cheerer. I appreciate that. Snorlax cheer said, Phil, when you had all of your games, art, and statues and other things displayed all over your old place, did your parents ever give you shit for it when they would come over? They wouldn't give me shit for it, but they would basically, at one point, they were like, okay, you got a lot here. The place is getting kind of cluttered. Is it ever going to stop? And, you know, as a guy who, at that point, you know, think about this. I was single. I had no clue what was going to happen with my life. I was a popular YouTuber out of nowhere, making money that I didn't know what to do with. And I was just being silly, buying shit left and right. A lot of the shit was good for my videos, admittedly. Like, you guys liked having the backgrounds and the decoration for the videos. A lot of the stuff I bought was the DSP Tries items and stuff. But yeah, I cluttered the fuck out of that place because I had money. I know what to burn it on. You know what I mean? And a lot of it certainly was wasted. And I should have invested it, and I should have done more, very much wiser things with it. But at that time of my life, I was basically an asshole. I was just sitting around drinking all the time, recording video games, uploading them, and not giving a shit about anything. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't give a shit about anything at all. It wasn't until much later, years later, that I got more serious about my life and everything. So, to answer you honestly, yes. Sometimes my parents would say, okay, you got another statue? Another one? You know, when's this going to end? Why are you getting all this stuff? And admittedly, that place was small. And to have that much shit in there was kind of like, what are you doing? Why do you have all this stuff in here, you know? Why don't you get a better place and put it there rather than keep cluttering this place? Will, son of Aragorn, did a 100-bit cheer. He says, you know, it's almost as if Ubisoft is following Capcom's lead in terms of how their games turn out. Yeah, you know, and Ubisoft, sadly, I think is in this rut where they think there's only like 3 categories of games. There's a cooperative shooter like The Division or, hair in my mouth, any of the 100 Tom Clancy games that are almost identical that have come out in the past few years. Or they got the open world game. Oh my God. Watch Dogs Legion, Assassin's Creed, Phoenix Rising. All these games are like the same open world formula, right? And then I believe they have that other, I forget what the third thing is that they do. They have three archetypes that they use to make games, and they can't get out of that stat. You know what I mean? Like, they're not innovating. They're not doing anything different. They're just doing the same thing over and over, and that's why a lot of people say all their games feel like they're the same. You know what I mean? So I hear you, Will. Mr. Hurdy-Gurdy Man Shady said, I think you should play Guilty Gear Strive. Its online play is the closest thing to being in a local I found. Definitely makes it worth learning the systems. I would be interested in checking it out. I don't know if I'm going to buy it. The game now has been delayed. If you're not aware, the game was delayed from April all the way till June because they said due to the feedback they received during the beta, they want to work on the game more. So we'll see what happens come June, I guess. Okay? All right, we've got time for probably one more question, and then we'll go on a break. The next question is from Linny9000. It says, why did I like the Batman animated series so much? Well, the answer is very simple. Because the Batman animated series took the viewing audience seriously. When I was a kid, and I used to watch cartoons, all right? Most cartoons were what were considered throwaway episodes. If you missed a single episode of a cartoon, you could go back at any point in the series, and you could watch it, and it wouldn't matter. There was no continuity in the episodes. It was just comedic stuff. Batman was not about comedy. It was about a serious plot line that was, you know, continuous going. You had to watch the episodes so you would understand the continuity. Darker themes. There were many serious adult-themed episodes in the Batman series that weren't just for kids. Also, I would say another series like that was X-Men. The X-Men cartoon had continuity, and you need to follow it. That's what I like. Cartoons that took the viewer seriously rather than, oh, it's just a throwaway show. Just watch any episode and you miss it. You know what? Is every show Looney Tunes where it doesn't matter? Every episode's a completely isolated story, and you don't ever need to have any context for it. I didn't like that. Like, I liked shows that made the viewing audience think a little more or have a little bit more of a background and see killer characters develop over time. You know what I mean? The Batman animated series had multiple Robins, which was cool to see the Robins change over time because that was the actual plot line of the comic books. I liked that about it. Okay. All right, I can answer one more question before we go on a break. This question is from Welcome to Snap City, and they asked the following. Phil, why do you not follow any more sports anymore, like UFC or the NFL or the NBA? You said yourself that you used to be active when you were younger. You did things like bodybuilding. You played sports. What about them do you not like? First of all, I did not bodybuild. I lifted weights. Lifting weights for health purposes is not the same as bodybuilding. I was not a bodybuilder. I told you my dad at one point was a bodybuilder, and then he stopped doing it as well, but I never bodybuilt. I just basically used the same home gym he had in the basement, and I lifted weights for a while. It was about a year and a half that I lifted weights. Pretty hardcore when I did it. Now, why am I not interested in sports? All right. The honest answer here is, in my lifetime, I never really had a lifestyle or life schedule where I was able to actively follow sports enough to be a sports fan. Okay. When I was a kid, I did follow things like baseball, so I was a Mets fan. And then I became a Jets fan in the 1990s, and I liked them for football. Okay. But then, when I started working, essentially my work schedule took over everything, and I always had jobs where I had to work weekends. Every job I had, like I worked at a fast food place, That was supposed to be health food. Yeah, right. It was like salads and frozen yogurt and smoothies and panini sandwiches. I always worked weekends, so I couldn't watch any sports games on the weekends, and that's when the majority of them were. Then after that, I worked at Circuit City. I always had to work weekends. Then after that, I worked at a bank for about a year, Wells Fargo Financial. During that year that I worked at the bank, I didn't work weekends, and I watched American football, and I got heavily into it, and I was a fan of it, and I was following two certain teams, and I would talk with my friends about American football. We went and watched the Super Bowl together at a bar. That year of my life, I was into sports. I was actually really a big fan of sports. I knew about all the big players, the stats, everything. I was very excited. And then after that year, I left that job. I went to Best Buy, started working for their business team, and I started working weekends again, and that was it. I didn't have time to watch sports anymore, you know? And then, I see what I mean? Like, basically, most of the time of my life, I never really had the opportunity to follow sports because I was so busy. Now, when I ended up getting the office job at the helicopter company, I did have a lot of weekend times off, okay? But I started doing, like, well, first of all, if you remember, that's when I had my back injury. And so at that point, when I first started that job was 2006, I was heavily in the Street Fighter, and I was all about Street Fighter, traveling for Street Fighter, playing Street Fighter. That was 2006, 2007, okay? Then in 2007, 2008 is when I basically quit doing competitive Street Fighter, and I had my back injury. That was really, really bad. And so I decided to get more into console games and then started doing YouTube. So basically, when Street Fighter took over as my hobby, and I started heavily doing Street Fighter, and then I didn't care about sports anymore. And then when I got into YouTube, that was like the end of it. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't have time at all. I'm constantly doing stuff for YouTube, so I don't have time for sports anymore. So, that's the deal. That's the answer. Like, right now, for me to get into sports, I would have to stop streaming on weekends to follow the sports games. I'm not going to do that. You know? Sports is just like pro wrestling, just like all these things. It's very time consuming to follow the product and know everything that's going on, to be in the know and understand things going on. And I just don't have that free time. If you have a job that's Monday through Friday and you have weekends off and you could watch most of these games, probably you could be a really big sports fan and enjoy it. But for me, my life schedule just really has never been in line with that, except for that 1 year that I worked at the bank. Outside of that, it's never really been in line with that. I've never been able to really follow it. So, okay. It seems like I got a tip, and if I did and it's legit, that'll be a shout out, and then we'll go on a quick break here. Let's take a look. Let's see. Let's take a look here. Yes, I received a $5 tip from Jester. Thank you to Jester for a $5 tip. Let's get that added to the total. It's up to $27 to tip so far today. He says, Phil, I hope all is well for you. Your Ghosts and Goblins stream is fantastic, and I can't wait to see what happens next, so I'm wondering when you're going to be planning to stream it again. Let me answer that. Because I'm streaming it twice in the coming week. 2 more times. Let's see. So the next stream is going to be Saturday night. It's going to be the late stream, 6:45 p.m. Pacific time. And then I'm going to do a major stream of it on Tuesday at 10:15 a.m. So, and you might say, well, why so infrequently? Because I'm just playing so much. Right now, I got Divinity I'm going to do 2 major streams of. Call of Duty is a major focus for me. And then the night streams are a little bit different. So I'm just trying to alternate between all the games that I'm playing right now and give them all enough time. So, yes, 2 streams of it coming in the next week. Fair enough? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much so far. Good stream so far. I like the questions, like the interactivity. Thank you for the contributions. Let's take about a 5 to 10 minute break. If you're watching on demand on YouTube, there will be no break. Just watch part 2, which will be out momentarily. If you're watching this live on stream, give me about 5-10 minutes. I'll be back for more. Okay, guys? Thank you so much so far, and I'll see you in a bit.